I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic book series by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode I will be talking about Prophecies Begin, Book 1, Into the Wild, Chapter 12. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Before I get into this chapter, I want to remind you that if you want, you can pay $5 a month to access the comment section for this podcast, as well as spoiler episodes that are extended versions of each episode, as well as behind the scenes content and bonus episodes, where I do things like unboxings or various other exclusive content. And now let's get into the chapter. So the chapter art for chapter 12 is two cats staring at the viewer at night with a full moon behind them. And this is the cover art for the second book in this series, Fire and Ice. But Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw are in a group with ThunderClan elders, queens, and warriors, waiting for Blue Star to give the signal for them to join the gathering. And this is the first time Firepaw's been there since his first journey with Lionheart and Tigerclaw. It says, the rich greenness of the woods had been bleached away by the cold light of the full moon, and the leaves on the trees glowed silver. At the bottom stood the large oaks that marked where the corner of each clan's territory touched the other three. It's passages like that really make me want to see this adapted to screen because it just sounds so beautiful and breathtaking. In the center of the clearing, there's a large jagged rock, and they can see a bunch of cats moving around in the grassy clearing surrounding it. Greypaw points out Crooked Star, RiverClan's leader, the light-colored tabby beside the great rock, and Firepaw followed Greypaw's nod and saw a huge tom, even bigger than Lionheart, sitting at the center of the clearing. I forgot that he's bigger than Lionheart. That's wild. Even from this distance, his old face showed the signs of a harsh life, and his mouth looked twisted, as if it had once been broken and had healed badly. And Greypaw says, "Did you see Sandpaw spit when I told her I hoped she had a nice evening at home?" "You bet," Firepaw purred. And then Ravenpaw interrupts them and points out Broken Star, ShadowClan's leader. I think this is our first look at Broken Star, but Broken Star is described as being a dark brown tabby with unusually long fur and a face that is broad and flattened. This description makes it sound like he's a Persian cat. I always just pictured him as a regular short-haired cat, but obviously that was wrong because he's literally described as having long fur and a flat face. Somehow that makes him both harder to take seriously and also more menacing, which those seem like opposites, but that's just how it feels to me. I don't know. And Greypaw says, "He certainly got a reputation among all the clans for not suffering fools gladly." And I had to look up that phrase to see if it was a common phrase because I was like, what the heck does not suffering fools gladly mean? I was thinking it meant he does not cause fools to suffer gladly. Like he does not take pleasure in causing fools to suffer. But that's actually not what it means. Let me Google not suffering fools gladly meaning. To be impatient or intolerant towards people one regards as foolish or unintelligent. So suffer in this context means like suffering through it. Like he does not take pleasure in suffering through foolishness of others. So that makes a little more sense, but I was just distracted by that when I read it. But anyway, Greypaw says, he's not been a leader that long. 4 moons, ever since his father, Ragged Star, died. I forgot about Ragged Star. And wait, so did Ragged Star make his own son his deputy? And so if Broken Star has been leader for 4 moons, back on page 133, Firepaw says they've been training for almost 3 moons. So Broken Star has only been leader for about a month longer than Firepaw has been Firepaw. And then Firepaw asks what the leader of Wind Clan looks like. Greypaw says, Tall Star? I've never seen him, but I know he's black and white with a very long tail. And they search the cats and they can't see Tall Star anywhere, or any Wind Clan cats for that matter. Lionheart assures them the Wind Clan cats may just be late. And Blue Star finally gives them the signal to join the gathering. And I'm wondering why she was being so careful. Like, is she worried ShadowClan's gonna break the truce that the gathering demands and attack them or something? And once they enter the clearing, a large white warrior strode past with huge jet black paws. It must be Blackfoot, mewed Greypaw, ShadowClan's new deputy. Blackfoot stalked over to Broken Star and sat down beside him. The ShadowClan leader acknowledged him with a twitch of one ear, but said nothing. I also forgot about Blackfoot. Ravenpaw asks, when does the meeting begin? And White Storm says, be patient. The sky is clear tonight, so we have plenty of time. So I guess how long the gathering is dependent on how clear the sky is. And Lionheart says, we warriors like to spend a little time boasting about our victories, while the elders swap tales about the ancient days before the Two Legs came here. So Dabbletail, One Eye, and Small Ear head straight off towards a group of elderly cats who were settling themselves below one of the oak trees. White Storm and Lionheart strolled over to another pair of warriors whom Firepaw did not know. He sniffed the air and recognized their scent as RiverClan. And Blue Star says, don't waste any of your time tonight. This is a good opportunity to meet your enemies. Oh, I forgot. I've been doing her voice as a British accent. Don't waste any of your time tonight. This is a good opportunity to meet your enemies. Listen to them. Remember what they look like and how they behave. There's a great deal to be learned from these meetings. And say little, warned Tigerclaw. Don't give anything away that might be used against us once the moon has waned. Don't worry, we won't, Firepaw promised, hastily looking into Tigerclaw's eyes. The feeling that Tigerclaw didn't trust his loyalty lingered with him still. The 2 warriors nodded and moved on, and the apprentices were left alone. I just realized there, the 2 warriors, I'm pretty sure, is referring to Blue Star and Tigerclaw. It's interesting that they refer to her as a warrior. I mean, I know she's a warrior, but she's the leader. Usually they would distinguish that and refer to her as, like, the leader and the warrior nodded and moved on. You know what I mean? Like, but there it says the 2 warriors. So I thought that was interesting. So then Firepaw says he's going to see where Tigerclaw went. Greypaw's going to find Lionheart. And Ravenpaw's going to find some other apprentices. And Firepaw finds Tigerclaw behind the great rock in the center of a group of huge warriors. And Tigerclaw is describing his recent battle against the RiverClan hunting party. I wrestled like a Lion Clan cat. 3 warriors tried to hold me, but I threw them off. I fought them until 2 lay knocked out, and the other had run off into the forest like a kit crying for its mother. And it mentions Lion Clan, which they're going to talk about in a little bit. But I just think it's funny that Tigerclaw is saying he fought like a Lion Clan cat. Why didn't he say he fought like a Tiger Clan cat? You know, maybe it's reading way too much into it, but this might be showing that Tigerclaw wants to be seen as strong, like Lionheart. And as Tigerclaw was telling this story, I was getting worried, like, isn't RiverClan pissed at ThunderClan, or at least at Tigerclaw, for killing Oakheart? I mean, I guess it's been a few moons since then, but still. So I feel like we should go back and get a refresher on the story. But it does say, this time Tigerclaw didn't mention killing Oakheart in vengeance for Redtail's death. Perhaps it's so he doesn't offend the RiverClan warriors, Firepaw decided. But let's go back and get the original recalling of the story, because I think it's important for this chapter. So on pages 41 to 43, Ravenpaw says, Redtail warned Oakheart to keep his hunting parties out of ThunderClan territory. He said the next RiverClan warrior to be caught in ThunderClan territory would be killed, but Oakheart would not back down. He said his clan had to be fed, whatever we threatened. That's when the RiverClan cats attacked. It was hard to see what was happening. The fighting was vicious. I saw Oakheart had Redtail pinned to the ground, but then Redtail and then Ravenpaw faints, and Tigerclaw brings Redtail's body into the clearing and says, "He died with honor, struck down by Oakheart. I couldn't save him, but I managed to take Oakheart's life while he was still gloating over his victory. Redtail's death was not in vain, for I doubt we'll see RiverClan hunters in our territory again." So that's that. But anyway, Firepaw gets distracted by the scent of Spotted Leaf, who is sitting opposite Greypaw between two RiverClan toms, and Firepaw glances at her shyly and settles himself beside his friend. And Greypaw points out Running Nose. He's the new ShadowClan medicine cat, apparently. So he is Yellowfang's replacement. I wonder if Yellowfang had been training him. And he's described as a small gray and white cat. I always pictured Running Nose as just a gray cat. So it's so interesting looking back and reading these actual descriptions. And just the way my brain imagined the cats in my head being different from how they were described on the page is so interesting to me. I can see why they call him Running Nose, Firepaw remarked. The medicine cat's nose was wet at the tip and encrusted around the edges. "Yep," replied Greypaw. "I can't see why they appointed him when he can't even cure his own cold." And Running Nose is telling the cats about a herb that medicine cats had used in the old days to cure kitten cough. "Since the two legs came and filled the place with hard earth and strange flowers," he complained in a high-pitched yowl, "the herb has disappeared, and the kittens die needlessly in cold weather." The cats gathered around him yowled their disapproval. "It never would have happened in the time of the great clan cats," growled a Black River Clan queen. "Indeed," mewed a Silver Tabby. "The great cats would have killed any two legs that dared enter their territory. If Tiger Clan roamed this forest still, Two Legs would not have built this far into our land." But Spotted Leaf quietly says, "If Tiger Clan still roamed these forests, we would hardly have made our territory here either." "What's Tiger Clan?" asks a little tabby apprentice. Greypaw explains that Tiger Clan is one of the great cat clans that used to roam the forest. Tiger Clan is cats of the night, big as horses with jet black stripes. So I guess I know what horses are. Then there's Lion Clan. Greypaw hesitated, frowning as he tried to remember. Okay, what does a cat frowning look like? "Oh, I've heard of them," mewed the tabby. "They were as big as Tiger Clan cats with yellow fur and golden manes like rays of the sun." And Greypaw nods and tries to recall the other clan. Spotty Clan or something like that. "I suspect you're thinking of Leopard Clan, young Greypaw," says Lionheart, who appears behind them. "Don't you youngsters know your history? Leopard Clan are the swiftest cats, huge and golden, spotted with black paw prints. You can thank Leopard Clan for the speed and hunting skills you now possess." I think it's funny that they're called Leopard Clan and not Cheetah Clan, because cheetahs are known for their speed. And I had to clarify this by asking Google, because I was like, are leopards also super fast? I mean, I know cheetahs are known for their speed, but are leopards also fast? And they probably are. But the Google AI overview says, cheetahs are slender, built for speed, 70 plus miles per hour, have solid black spots, distinct black tear marks on their faces, hunt in open plains during the day, and have non-retractable claws. Leopards are stocky, powerful climbers with rosette spots, no tear marks, hunt stealthily at night in varied terrain, and have fully retractable claws, making them strong ambush predators. So, it's interesting. I wonder why it's not Cheetah Clan, but it's Leopard Clan. I also don't think I've ever heard of a warrior named, like, Cheetah something. It's always Leopard something, so I don't know. But anyway, Lionheart says, "There's a trace of all the great cats in every cat today. We would not be night hunters without our Tiger Clan ancestors, and our love of the sun's warmth comes from Lion Clan." And then Lionheart asks the Shadow Clan apprentice how many moons he is. And he stares awkwardly at the ground and stammers, 6 moons? "Rather small for 6 moons, Lionheart murmured. His tone was gentle, but his gaze was searching and serious. "My mother was small too," answered the tabby nervously. He bowed his head and backed away, disappearing into the crowd of cats with a twitch of his light brown tail. So they definitely seem to be emphasizing this, and I know Blue Star was saying, like, take this opportunity to gather as much information as you can, so it definitely looks like Lionheart is doing that. But then Greypaw and Firepaw find Ravenpaw in the middle of a group of apprentices who are asking him about the battle with RiverClan. "Go on, Ravenpaw, tell us what happened," called a pretty black and white she-cat. Ravenpaw shyly shuffled his paws and shook his head. "Come on, Ravenpaw," insisted another. And Ravenpaw looks up and sees Firepaw and Greypaw, and Firepaw nods to him encouragingly. So Ravenpaw begins his story. Fur was flying everywhere. Blood spattered the leaves of the bramble bushes, bright red against green. I'd just fought off a huge warrior and sent him squealing into the bushes when the ground shook, and I heard a warrior scream. It was Oakheart. Redtail raced past me, his mouth dripping blood and his fur torn. "Oakheart is dead," he howled. Then he rushed off to help Tigerclaw as he fought another warrior. "Who would have thought Ravenpaw was such a good storyteller?" Greypaw murmured to Firepaw, sounding impressed. But Firepaw was thinking of something else. What was it Ravenpaw had said? That Redtail had killed Oakheart? But according to Tigerclaw, Oakheart had killed Redtail, and he, Tigerclaw, had killed Oakheart in revenge. So we're starting to see holes in Ravenpaw's story. If Redtail killed Oakheart, who killed Redtail? Firepaw hissed to Greypaw. If who did what? Greypaw echoed it absent-mindedly. He was only half listening to Firepaw. Firepaw shook his head to clear it. Ravenpaw must have been mistaken, he thought. He must have meant Tigerclaw. And Ravenpaw continues. Finally, Redtail dragged the wailing cat off Tigerclaw by his tail, and with the strength of the whole of TigerClan, flung him into the bushes. A moving shadow caught Firepaw's eye. I love that description. He glanced around and saw Tigerclaw standing a short distance away. The warrior was watching Ravenpaw with an iron stare. Unaware of his mentor's presence, Ravenpaw continued to answer question after question from his enthusiastic audience. Firepaw saw a look of horror and fury creep over Tigerclaw's face, and Firepaw was just about to say something to Greypaw when a loud yell signaled all the cats for quiet, and Firepaw couldn't help feeling relieved as Ravenpaw fell silent at last and Tigerclaw turned away. And Firepaw looks up at the great rock, where 3 cats are silhouetted against the moonlight: Bluestar, Brokenstar, and Crookedstar. I wonder what their conversation was like before starting the meeting. Like, Bluestar and Crookedstar were probably looking at each other like, where the F is WindClan? And then looking at Brokenstar like, well? And Brokenstar being like, I don't know what you're talking about, let's just get started. And Bluestar says, Cats of all clans, welcome. Cats of all clans, welcome. It is true that WindClan is not present, but Brokenstar wishes to speak anyway. Of course Brokenstar wants to speak. Now I love the way the writers describe Brokenstar in his actions, and his dialogue is very distinct. Like, they do such a good job at making him a very distinct character, and it's very well written, in my opinion. Brokenstar padded noiselessly up to stand beside Bluestar. He surveyed the crowd for a few moments, his orange eyes burning. Then he took a deep breath and began. Friends, I come to speak to you tonight about the needs of ShadowClan. But he's interrupted by a bunch of cats asking, like, where's Tallstar? Where's the WindClan warriors? Brokenstar stretched up to his full height and lashed his tail from side to side. As the leader of ShadowClan, it is my right to address you here, he growled in a voice full of menace. We all know that the hard time of Leafbear and late New Leaf have left us with little prey in our hunting grounds, but we also know that WindClan, RiverClan, and ThunderClan lost many kits in the freezing weather that came so late this season. ShadowClan did not lose kits. We are hardened to the cold north wind. Our kits are stronger than yours from the moment they are born, and so we find ourselves with many mouths to feed and too little prey to feed them. The needs of ShadowClan are simple. In order to survive, we must increase our hunting territory. That is why I insist that you allow ShadowClan warriors to hunt in your territories. And a shocked but muted growl ripples through the crowd. I find it very harsh that in expressing the needs for his clan, he's putting down all the other clans, bringing up that they've lost kits, which is, like, traumatic, and also claiming that, well, our babies that survived are stronger than yours, so we need to steal your territory. Thank you very much. Like, the audacity. Like, how about you try to come up with some kind of agreement and ask and negotiate rather than demanding. It's very aggressive, I think. Share our hunting grounds, called an outraged voice from Tigerclaw. Should ShadowClan be punished because our kids thrive? Do you want us to watch our young starve? You must share what you have with us, demands Brokenstar. Wind Clan failed to understand this. In the end, we were forced to drive them out of their territory. And if we have to, we'll drive you all from your hunting grounds in order to feed our hungry kids. Each year, the Two Lakes spoil more of our territory. At least one clan must remain strong if all the clans are to survive. Shadow Clan thrives while you all struggle, and there may come a time when you will need us to protect you. I do not ask for your answer now. You must each go away and consider my words, but bear this in mind. Would you prefer to share your prey, or be driven out and left homeless and starving? And Crooked Star steps forward and says, I have already agreed to allow Shadow Clan some hunting rights in the river that runs through our territory. Horror and humiliation ripples through the River Clan cats. I feel that this is best for our clan, for all the clans, Crooked Star explained, his voice heavy with resignation. There are plenty of fish in the river. It is better to share our prey than to spill blood fighting over it. Blue Star says, I have made no agreement with Broken Star, except that I shall discuss his proposal with my clan after the gathering. Broken Star says, I also bring news that is important to the safety of your kits. A Shadow Clan cat has turned rogue and spurned the warrior code. We chased her out of our camp, but we do not know where she is now. She looks a mangy old creature, but she has a bite like Tiger Clan. Now, I think this is the first use of the term rogue, which will be used more to refer to more cats going forward. And Firepaw wonders if he could be talking about Yellowfang. She is dangerous. I warn you, do not offer shelter to her. And, until she is caught and killed, I urge you to keep a close eye on your kits. And Firepaw hears nervous growls coming from ThunderClan cats. The bold she-cat had done nothing to endear herself to her reluctant hosts, and Firepaw guessed it wouldn't take much to drum up hatred against her. Even the words of a despised enemy like Broken Star would be enough. And Broken Star leaps down from the rock and leads his clan back to their territory, including the undersized tabby Lionheart had questioned earlier. But among the other Shadow Clan apprentices, the tabby no longer looked unusually small. They all looked tiny and undernourished, more like kits of 3 or 4 moons than full-fledged apprentices. And as ThunderClan prepares to leave, Small Ear growls, that must be Yellowfang he was talking about. Well, she did snap at Goldenflower's youngest kit the other day, murmured Speckled Tail darkly. She was the oldest nursery queen and fiercely protective of all the kits. And when she says she snapped at Goldenflower's youngest kit, at first when I read that, I thought she meant like snapping with her teeth, like trying to bite. But I think it actually means snap, like saying something harshly. Because I don't think Yellowfang has ever tried to hurt them. She's just been very grumpy around them and not wanting to have anything to do with them. And we've left her behind with the camp virtually unguarded, wailed One Eye. That's kind of a diss to Sandpaw and Dustpaw. But Darkstripe says, I tried to tell you she was a danger to us. Blue Star has to listen to reason now and get rid of her before she harms any of our young. Tiger Claw says, we must return to camp at once and deal with this rogue. Firepaw didn't stop to hear more. Loyal as he was to his clan, he just couldn't believe that Yellowfang would be a danger to kits. So he races ahead of the clan without telling Greypaw or Ravenpaw. Had he been mistaken about Yellowfang? If he warned her about the danger she was in, would he be risking his own position in ThunderClan? Whatever trouble he got himself into, he had to find out the truth from her before the other cats got back to the camp. And that's the end of chapter 12. And when I finished reading that chapter, I immediately wanted to go on to the next chapter. But I had to film this episode. So maybe I'll immediately start reading the next chapter and immediately start preparing for the next episode. But the plot thickens. It's getting exciting, and I just want to keep reading. So yeah, so with that, I'm going to close out the episode. Remember, if you want to access the spoiler versions and the comment section for this podcast, you can subscribe for $5 a month on Substack. Thank you so much for being here. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.